Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and this is a preview of the Adventures of Conan. Welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. I'm Professor Meg, and today we have a preview of the Adventures of Conan. Thank you to Guildforce9 for sponsoring this video, and please keep in mind that this is a prototype copy. A lot of the things are in flux, and this is a bit of a, I wouldn't say it's too much of a heavy game, but it is a little bit confusing to understand at first, but once you get the hang of it, it's very competitive, and there are a lot of intricacies to it, and that being said, there will also be a playthrough on the Board Game Co channel. So if you'd like to see more about how this plays and what it actually looks like besides what I'm going to describe, you'll be able to see me, Alex, and AP playing this on the channel as well. So with that, I'm just going to jump right into the Adventures of Conan. Now, in the Adventures of Conan, players are going to be using their unique dice, gaining more and more dice throughout the game, becoming more powerful, and maneuvering around the board to get as many victory points as possible. Now, there are a few different ways to get victory points. There are the adventures and encounters, there's also combat, you're also moving up this track, and you are moving up the achievement track as well. So there are quite a few ways for you to gain victory points, and the end game will be triggered depending on the number of players when you hit a certain point threshold. Now, this is the Adventures of Conan, so that being said, you will always play with a Conan, and you will play with a foe. The foe we have over here is Aemon the Flayed, but there's also an ally named Abit. Now, there is an ally in this game who is an ally to Conan, but this is a competitive game. It is not cooperative, and they are not necessarily working together. They're just kind of where Conan is, and they are sharing him. They don't actually have a token on the board, and personally, I think this is a really unique mechanic that everyone is competitively playing, but you're kind of using roles a bit uniquely, and that kind of causes a push and pull for Conan that he's moved around the board both by that player and the ally player. Now, in a 4-player game, there's also another foe that you would play with, and all of them have their own custom dice. So for Conan here, you can see that he has his 2 sets of custom dice, because there are your main dice, and then there are dice that you are able to purchase and add on later. And as you move up this achievement track, you will also gain an additional dice, as well as when you move up this track, after you finish the 3rd chapter, you will also get an extra dice. But what are all these dice for? What exactly are you doing? So in this game, you're going to be playing through multiple different phases and using that to make decisions to set you up for the round for how you will be gaining all these different victory points. So when the round begins, you will first flip out one of these event cards, and this is where you will spawn different things. So you will spawn an enemy in Aquilonia, which means you would take one of these tokens here and you would place it in that area. Let's see, am I going to be able to find it quickly? Oh goodness. Why am I not seeing? Oh, haha. Okay, so sorry about that. But you will place the token here, and then you also would get a token placed in Zingara Pictland. Now, these tokens are fate tokens where they are going to be added to your dice rolls. You're going to be able to use them to augment your dice, which we'll get to in a second. But to resolve this, you would also place these into those 2 different areas. Now, this also shows a bonus that would apply. And after that, players will be rolling their dice to move along this track. So depending on the chapter that they're rolling for, they will want to be rolling specific results. So let's say that I'm rolling for Conan and I have these 4 dice available to me. I will roll them, and this is, wow, that's pretty good, which is, a little bit how I roll, but the stars are wilds, so I got 2 wilds already. I also got swords, a flag, and an eye. And for this one, you can see that I need feet, swords, and a pouch, which is the little thieves pouch. So with my 2 wilds, I can easily get that. But if I had rolled the feet, for example, and the pouch, that's another way that I would be able to do it, is that I would be able to resolve it with both of these. And then if you get the extra yellow one, you would get an additional bonus as well. And because Conan is the axe character, he would be able to advance one on their lowest achievement track, which is down here, and you would move up on this track. Now, when you move up on this track, you will gain different benefits. You can gain coins for the thieves track, the ship track will get you fate tokens, and the warrior track will allow you to roll these different dice for the different areas that you are in. And they will also gain you victory points. That once you get to this track here, they're all worth 5 victory points, and when you get to the final ends of the track, they're worth 8 victory points, meaning that if you are able to get all 3 of your counters to the end of this track, you're scoring 24 points. Now, we got a little distracted looking at the achievement track, but I think it's useful to know how that works. So, the first step of this phase is that you will be going through the resource phase. As I said, you will flip one of these event cards, you will roll your dice attempting to complete these challenges. Now, if I had not rolled what I needed at the beginning, let's say for example I had rolled this, then I would be able to take my 2 dice that aren't applicable to the particular challenge, and I would be able to roll them again, and then I would be able to roll one final time if I needed to. Now, when you do move forward, on top of getting the benefits, you also get victory points, so that's a way for you to gain victory points throughout the chapter. You gain 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 respectively as you move up, and they do get more and more difficult. Now, I did mention the fate tokens. There are these tokens here, and they all have a specific symbol on them. So you are able to use those to augment dice that you have rolled. They don't give you that result automatically. You still have to have a die to apply it to, but if you have a die that is a face that you don't want it to be, you can use one of those fate tokens to change it and use it as that result instead. Now, there are other ways to use fate tokens, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, during the resource phase, all players will have their chance to go through this, and then after that, the main phase will begin. Players will reset their dice, rolling all of them, and then use them to take different actions along this main board. Now, some of the actions can vary depending on who you're playing as, such as Conan, the foe, or the ally, but generally, the actions will have your symbol, which again for Conan is the axe. That allows it to be an almost wild. It's not technically a wild, but it would allow it to be any of a specific set, which I'm going to go through now. So the next symbol is a flag. If you have a flag, your character is able to perform that ability that is in the region that they're in. So for example, we have Conan over here, and he is able to trade any fate tokens for specifically ship fate tokens. Now there are other things that you're able to do as well, such as over here you can gain 2 of the foot tokens. Over here you can set a focus active die. So all of these different regions will give you different abilities that you may want to move around the board and perform that ability, or be sure you perform it before you move out of it instead. Now, another thing that the flag would allow you to do is pay 1 for one of these god tokens. Every round players will get god tokens, but you're able to pay to get extra ones, and basically there's something cool that you get to do throughout the game. Sometimes it's reroll all dice or reroll 1 die, things like that, but they're basically a bit powerful, but something that you spend and use, so it is a bit balanced that way. Now, the next one is the barrel token, and the barrel token will allow you to trade 1 type of fate token for another, or you are able to cycle an adventure. We'll get to the adventures and the encounters over here next, but it would allow you to cycle through one to have a different option. Now, there is the foot side. That's pretty self-explanatory in my opinion, but you're able to move to an adjacent region. You're moving your character, but you are moving them, and if you move them into an area with one of these tokens, you will flip it over and resolve the effect. So this one isn't anything, but if we flip this one over and resolve it, it's a snake, which you would then need to fight, and it would do damage to you. Some of them are also enemies that you would have to fight. This is an ambush. Whoop. And this one is actually something good. It stuck to my hand. But this one would actually give you coins instead. So that would be moving. And another thing that you are able to do with that action, which is more rarely used, but you are able to move a fate token to an adjacent kingdom. All of these little areas with the white lines are kingdoms. Now, if you roll the satchel side, that is, you can steal 1 gold, which you don't actually steal from any players, you just take 1 gold from the supply, or you can use it to advance on the thief track here if you're in an area that has the satchel symbol. So for example, again, over here where Conan is, there is a satchel symbol in this kingdom, so you would be able to use it to move up on the thief track. Now, another symbol is the ship symbol, and that actually gives you a lot of flexibility in movement. So if you do have the ship symbol, if you are on a area that has that inside of the kingdom as well, you're on a port, and you are able to use that to move from port to port. So Conan here would be able to use it to move here, or here, or here, down here, Or there's one port up here as well, because you can see this little bit of water, which connects, I don't know, somewhere down here. But you are able to use that to basically jump around the board a bit. And you are also able to spend this when you are in a region, again with the ship symbol, to move up the achievement track on that track as well. Now, the final symbol is the swords, which, as you can guess, are fighting. Sorry, it's not on that one. But here's our sword symbol. So you can use this to form a warrior pool for a fight or duel, or you can use it to advance on the warrior track in this achievement track, again, if you are in a kingdom with the warrior symbol on it. Now, the other die sides, those are the ones that you're able to use your symbol for, but the other dice that are available are an eye. Conan, I believe, does not have any of them, but there is an eye symbol. Oh, goodness. Oh, goodness. We need an eye. Here we go. So there is the eye symbol, which is scry a challenge token or one card, which means you're able to look at it yourself and see what it is. Then you are able to spend a coin to perform a move action, so you kind of are able to do two different things. And then there is also a swirly symbol, which you can see a little bit on here, but you are able to use it to gain a challenge token, then place one, or cycle an encounter. Now, a couple other things you'll be able to do throughout the game is gain money, which you will be using to purchase extra dice during the resource phase, but that is a lot of the actions that you will be taking. So you'll be using them to move around the board and gain these different resources. A big thing you'll be doing is moving up the achievement track and picking up the different fate tokens, but something that we haven't gotten to is the encounters and adventures. Now, encounters are something that will happen in quite a few of the regions. For example, this one would happen in any of the ports, so it's a bit easier to trigger the encounters. The adventures are in specific areas. For example, this one is in Koth, this one is in Hyboria, and this one is in Nemedia. So Conan would need to be in these specific areas for the adventures to trigger. Now, for the encounters to trigger, you need to have a certain number of dice set over here in the encounter track. There needs to be 3 dice added here amongst players, and if there are, then these encounters will trigger. Now, the way that works is, depending on the dice that are placed here, that will negate dice away from the people that are rolling. So, for example, if these dice are here, these 2 red ones are the foes, which means that when Conan is rolling, he starts with a base of 4 dice, and he would be 2 short, which means he's only able to roll 2 dice for the different encounters. But another thing is that the dice that you use to lock in for these specific symbols can also give you successes for those encounters, so that can also be a very powerful thing to do as well. But it's kind of a push and pull of whether or not you want to trigger the encounters and who is able to do it. Whoops, I did not mean to just move a couple things, but we're fine. So once you go through the encounters, those are also worth victory points, but basically Conan will try to complete them, and they will be able to roll their dice so they're able to commit to it, and if they are not able to do it, then the foe and ally will be able to attempt to complete these encounters as well. Now, the adventures are a bit different, where they trigger, as I said, if Conan is in that area. And for the adventures to trigger, what would happen is, say for example, we are in Koth, then starting with the other players, the ally first would roll their dice, and then the foe, and Conan is able to choose which dice are allocated to these symbols. He can add as many as he wants and then roll his to add the symbols there, but it's a bit of a tricky push and pull, because depending on the number of dice that you've allocated, you'll get that many victory points. So if Conan somehow was able to place all 5 dice for themselves, then they would get 15 victory points. But if they took 1 from their foe, 2 from their allies, and could only add 2 for themselves, then everyone would get a bit of victory points, but Conan would also be able to keep the card because they were the ones to complete it, which also gives them this ability. You would be able to advance 1 on the thief track and gain 3 gold. So again, it's a bit tricky with who wants to complete it, but if at the end of that round Conan cannot complete it, it will then pass over to the other players that they are able to complete the card as well, and then they would be able to gain it for completing it, and anyone who contributed dice would get the victory points as usual. Now, after that is the end phase where there's a bit of cleanup, but that is going through all of the phases of the game. You will start with adding resources and going through the chapters, then you will be playing around the main board, making a lot of decisions, and then you will resolve any encounters, and then adventures, and then have the end of the round. Now, this game is, as I said, a bit of a push and pull, and you're trying to figure out exactly which tracks you are able to go up on. So you are trying to go up on these different chapters, but you are also trying to go up on the achievement track, and you are trying to gain points every round as you are going through the different adventures and encounters. A major part of the game will be deciding which areas will be most advantageous for you and whether or not you should be moving toward your opponent, because you are also able to fight. Conan and his foes can fight each other, and that will cause them to lose dice if they lose in the battle, and you will be getting ahead of them on victory points. But it can also be dangerous to move in toward your opponent, and you may want to choose to use those resources to move slow and steady up certain achievement tracks, or use them to build up for future turns to be sure that you have fate tokens to beat these different chapters. So there's definitely quite a few ways to be moving around this game, and I do think it's one of those games that there are quite a few paths to victory where you can focus on specific areas, and all of the different characters between Conan, the foe, and the ally feel so unique that you're kind of completing your own puzzle, but you're also able to understand enough what other people are doing that you can kind of tell how well they may or may not be doing and where you may need to stop them because they may be just a bit too powerful. Again, if you'd want to see more, there is a playthrough that will be on the Board Game Code channel that will perhaps give you a bit more light on what the game is like. As a reminder, this video has been sponsored by Gale Force 9, and this project is currently on GameFound. You can check out the link down below. I highly suggest checking it out to see everything else that they have planned for this game. And with that, this has been a preview of The Adventures of Conan. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.